Welcome to Superstitions, Traditions, and Definitions. I'm Kristen.
And I'm Carol.
And today is Am I the Asshole Historical Edition.
My favorite.
I know.
What's going on today? I want to look over here, but I don't.
No, you don't.
No.
Oh, this one's going to make you mad.
Okay. Here, let me get a drink.
Take a drink. A few breaths.
Okay, let's do it.
All right. Am I the asshole for taking in children, primarily babies of unwed mothers, for a fee to make ends meet after my husband died?
I'm afraid where this is going to go.
It's Victorian England.
Oh, shit. Okay. I know where it's going to go.
Mm-hmm. All right, you ready?
Okay.
Okay.
Did you pick this just to make me mad? So I get all fired up, say bad words on your podcast?
I don't know. I'm kind of debating if I need to scoot away from you.
I'll follow you.
I know.
You may as well just stay where you're at.
I know.
Okay, let's do.
Okay,
let's hear.
Let's do this.
Grip my teeth a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
My husband died in 1864.
Did he die or did he run away from her?
He died.
Are you sure?
No.
He's not just faking it?
I wasn't there.
Okay, so, I mean, maybe he ran off. Maybe she's just that vile.
Perhaps.
And then she just decided to take it out on small children?
Wait, we don't know yet. You don't know.
I bet I do. Go for it. Go ahead. All right, let's hear.
My husband died in 1864, leaving our children and myself destitute. I scoured the Clerkenwell News for work, but at 31, with nothing but housewifery to offer as experience, I could find nothing I was qualified to do.
Okay.
I had heard of unwed mothers paying up to £10 to an adoptive parent and seen the advertisements of women looking for children to nurse. I had a brilliant idea.
Uh-oh.
I ran an ad offering to adopt a baby for a payment of £10. After picking up the baby, I answered the ads of the women looking for babies to nurse. I paid the wet nurse a fortnight's fee, left the baby with her, and pocketed the difference. I never returned for the child.
Oh.
Unfortunately, I ran into a problem. The promiscuity of young girls meant I was collecting more babies than I could dump off on wet nurses. I didn't intend to start baby farming, but the money was good.
Oh my God.
Especially from the wealthy men who met me at the train station with hours-old unwanted babies. If I promised to provide good care for the child, I could easily get £20 for them. I attended the children as best I could, had a doctor on call for them until a permanent home could be located, and the child permanently adopted. I tried to keep the number of children in my care at only 4, but the lack of morals of young girls, their promiscuity, posed a problem. I had no choice but to take in more children.
Oh.
Occasionally,
so it's everybody else's fault that she had to take in more children because you're dealing with the slutty population, I guess.
Basically.
What a saint. What a fucking saint.
Uh-huh.
Amazing.
Occasionally, a child died in my care. 5 total. Died from convulsions or diarrhea. I had receipts from the undertaker to prove proper burials of the first 4. When little John Walter Cowan died, I was overwhelmed. I had half a dozen babies in my care. I wrapped him in a brown paper bag and left his body on the streets.
Oh.
I didn't realize a Bobby was watching me. He arrested me and claimed the other babies in my care were filthy and starving.
Mm-hmm.
I was tried for murder, convicted, and sentenced to death. I was the first woman to hang for baby farming, but certainly not the last. Victorian England soon discovered there were many like me.
Oh my God.
But as I stated at my execution, the parents of illegitimate children seeking to get rid of them by any means are more to blame. If this class of people did not exist, neither would my business.
Well, of course. But she made a choice.
Yeah.
And yeah, don't let the parents of any of them off. I mean, that's despicable.
The mother, so she was found out with John Walter Cowan, who was an infant. His mother, Janet Tassie Cowan, was a 16-year-old girl. It was common in Victorian England for girls, teenage girls, to be farmed out by their families, to be servants or whatever, housemaids. And there were a lot of unwanted pregnancies with those girls.
Being a maid. Because being a maid will get you pregnant.
Right. Yeah. So
not the man of the house.
Not the man of the house.
Not his fault.
No.
That's what you get for bending over and scrubbing the fireplace.
Right. That's how it happens.
Little Vixen.
Yes.
It's terrible. Every bit of that.
And once you had a baby out of wedlock, nobody would hire you.
Sure.
Nobody wanted anything to do with you. You were ostracized and
because you are going to, push your behavior off on other people, and other people would learn to be.
Yeah, there was not
upright. I guess
no welfare, no aid, nothing like that.
Very Les Mis.
And
I haven't seen Les Mis. Okay. But that's the story, basically.
Is it?
Yeah.
There was also laws in place in England at this time that stated the fathers of illegitimate children had no responsibility or obligation to the mother or the child.
You see why mothers are desperate. I get it. I get it.
Because it was always the mother's fault.
Of course it was.
Not the men.
But then on the other side of that, if the woman or the mother can't get pregnant, it's her fault. It's not ever that something's wrong with the man. So it was her fault on all fronts.
Yeah.
Yep.
Everything was always the woman's fault. And women were property.
Yes.
At this time also.
Yes.
So
yes. Not yes, good. Yes, that's how it was. And that's awful.
Yes. So
for our change in law.
Right. There were very few orphanages.
Sure.
There ones that were
there wouldn't be. Because, once you have a need for something, that's when it starts to spring up.
Right.
And these children are dying, and it's horrible that they're, I don't ever think of an unwanted child as unwanted. I think of it as the person who had this child. It's their fault. It's not the kid's fault.
Yeah. But it was also most of the time a product of rape.
Sure.
And once the woman had the baby, there was nothing for her.
Right.
She could move and claim to have been married and husband passed, and people helped widows with children.
Yeah.
But
you just got to make sure that doesn't catch up with you. Right. And sometimes it did.
And sometimes it did.
I just don't know where I was going with that. I have so many thoughts. But she's definitely the asshole. She didn't do it to help anybody. She did it to help herself. And I understand she had children, but you know what she could have done? She could have gotten remarried. That would have knocked out baby farming, which, what a horrible term. I even hated that it came out of my mouth. But, that would have been, and I shouldn't have to get married. You shouldn't, but you have things to take care of. And you know what you shouldn't have done is taken in babies and let them die.
Right.
So if that's all that you're cut out to be is somebody's mother, then mother them. Take care of them. You're getting money for it. Give them a bath, feed them. And her whole enterprise with finding wet nurses and all this. She knew what she was doing.
Yeah.
She wasn't trying to help anybody but herself.
That was her original plan. Was she would meet these wet nurses. She even made a statement. I read an article from the newspaper at the time where, her confession, and she said nobody asked for my address or anything.
They probably worked with mothers who were like, I will come back for my baby.
Can you imagine leaving your baby with a stranger for 2 weeks?
If I had no other way to feed them,
Right.
I could view it as like a hospital stay.
Right.
I mean, but you know
but
what I
you're
would
going
do?
to go check on them.
Well, of course, yes. I would be there every day. Hi, how's it going? Did you feed my baby last night?
Right.
Is my baby feeding like he's supposed to? Is he doing okay? The fact that she didn't come back, I mean, there may have been some legit moms that didn't come back. Maybe.
Well, and they probably
might have had
assumed
4 other children at home or something.
Maybe that was a common practice also with the unwed mothers.
Just drop them off and come back.
Or just drop them off and never come back. Maybe it was something they had to do something. They couldn't let people know.
Right.
They had a baby out of wedlock. They had to hide the pregnancy. They had to hide the child after it was born.
You know, what city are we talking about? We're talking about London.
This is in London.
That's what I thought. London is big enough, don't you think you could have found a different neighborhood? I mean, I'm not trying to make light of it, but if everybody knows you here, everybody knows you here.
Right.
But if you go 17 blocks that way.
If you go 17 blocks that way, you have to fit into that social class to stay there.
Well, someplace
like they were grouped within their social class,
yes.
And everybody knew everybody.
Mm.
She could have left London.
That takes money. I get it. I'm not trying to be, thoughtless here,
right.
But I'm trying to think about what would I do if it was me. I would not let harm come to my baby. I would figure something out.
Yeah,
that's what I like to think, because that's just my mentality. And it's always been my mentality since I was a little kid. So I will figure it out. If nobody's going to help me, if I had to steal, I would do that.
Right.
Before
right.
I would let harm come to my kid.
But these mothers, that was one of the things she said. They always promised I would take good care of their baby, and sometimes there were cases of women who did this legitimately, took care of the baby for a fee.
Sure.
I mean, it was kind of like foster care. This is pre-foster care,
of course,
kind of thing.
And if they did what they said, I mean,
right?
Hi, leave your baby with me, and I will let it die and starve to death. And then you'd be like, no, I'm not leaving my baby with you.
Right. But there were cases of women who stayed in contact, paid the fee ever so often and checked on their child. They would get married. Mm-hmm. And once they had a family, they would go back and get their child. They still couldn't tell people it was their illegitimate child.
We adopted this baby.
We adopted this baby, or this is our servant.
What's wrong with that? What's wrong with it? There's nothing wrong with that.
They did what they had to do.
They did, yes. They kept their baby alive and fed, maybe not with them, which would suck.
Right.
But go out and create a life. I mean, for this little life that you created.
And then, sometimes they were able to go back and get their child.
Right.
Or get married. And
I just put it on, what? People are like, well, if that baby's just going to die anyway. Well, no, that's not our thinking, is that, you now have this person you're responsible for. Do better. You don't get to be your old self. You get to be your new self. And while this might be hard and unsavory, forge ahead, man. Well, I mean, and like you said, there were legitimate people who did take care of children. Why couldn't she have done that? Obviously, she knew how to take care of children. Right. She had her own that she didn't let die and starve and leave out on the street.
And the way it sounds, that was her intent. But
the road to hell.
Right, is paved with good intentions.
Yes, it is. Follow through with your intention. I mean, the fact that she had anybody die. I mean, if they get sick, if you don't know what to do, if a lot of children died from illness and stuff back then. That's one terrible thing, but the fact that she let them, I feel like she let them die.
I mean, she had a doctor on call.
Well, why were her babies filthy and starving then?
That was what the Bobby reported.
Who I think we can take his word. The cop who caught her and.
But infant mortality was...
Sure, but infant cleanliness...
True.
Is that not kind of up to the person who's there responsible? My kids were always clean.
I can't say that. My kids were not always clean.
Did they get baths?
They did.
Did you let them starve to death?
No.
Okay, there. Look,
they got food.
Good
They
mom.
got baths.
Good mom. Good mom.
And then they got to play in the mud.
Well, yeah, of course. I didn't keep my impeccable little babies in a bubble. I mean, they went out and played and got dirty and ripped up their clothes and, shit like that.
Right.
Perfectly acceptable in my book. But they didn't starve, and they weren't... These babies would have been filthy. If the Bobby said that they were filthy and starving, she's not taking care of them. She's definitely the asshole.
They know of 5 babies that died in her care. Which, she did this for 6 years.
So 5 is the tolerant level of loss. How many did she have
at
total?
This time?
Did they tell us that?
Sometimes up to 6 at a time. But no, I never could find out how many she had in her care.
I know 6 is a lot, but as a mother of twins, I know that there are a lot of things that are harder than just having to take care of babies. And if she was home, which she was, she didn't have to leave and go to work. This was her work.
Right. But but my point is, at this time, if she kept these babies,
yes,
up to 6 at a time for 6 years, depending on how quickly they were.
Perhaps there were more than 5 that died, and she just didn't tell us this.
Perhaps, or she really did do the best she could, taking care of them. If there were only 5. If there were only 5 babies that died in Victorian England...
I know, but think of 5 children,
It's different times.
It is different times, but still...
Children aren't dying from whooping cough now.
Only 5 died. It's still pretty bad.
For the time period, it's not. It's good. That's good.
It's good that they died?
It's not good that they died, but it's good that...
She's better than the national average.
Right.
Sure. I get that. But she had a little dead baby she left on the street.
Yes. Because undertaking was expensive.
Well, if she had all these babies, then she was making a good living, and she probably could have afforded to
give it a proper burial.
Yeah.
She gave 4 proper burials.
I'm suspicious of her. I don't think that there probably were only 5.
There probably weren't.
No.
It would not make sense at all given the time.
Sure.
That in 6 years with vaccines, 6 babies at a time, that
there weren't a lot
only 5 would die.
We didn't have plastic baby bottles and the things that make germ infestation difficult.
At this time there was a bottle they invented that was killing babies.
Right. Well, that's horrible, but then you find the thing out and you stop using the thing.
Right. It took them a minute.
I bet. And it's just, I don't ever, look at this little person who's died and say, oh, but it was the baby bottle. Sorry for your luck. You've got a bigger heart than that.
I do, but I'm still thinking,
I know. 5 little babies that died because of nothing they did.
Nothing they did.
Nothing they did.
But that was common.
That doesn't make it good, though.
It doesn't make it good.
Doesn't make it right. Doesn't make it acceptable.
Right.
Sorry that I'm hard-ass about this.
Leaving a baby in a brown paper bag on the street, a dead baby, doesn't
not acceptable.
Make it okay.
No. Just
tricking
because it
a
was
child
expensive.
into
assuming
this responsibility. It was one of the things she would do to get rid of children she couldn't adopt out, was take this baby out in the streets in a busy shopping area, convince a child to hold it because she was tired, give the child money to go into the candy shop, and then while the child was in there,
she knew what she was doing. Every bit was reprehensible. So, if she can do that to some little child with some little baby that she knew was not going to be okay, just because it's out of her hands doesn't mean it's not her fault. She doesn't get to wash her hands of the bullshit that she inspired, I guess. And she certainly, she is not the only one. She's just the one we have a name for.
Oh, no, we have names for lots. Amelia
Sure.
Dyer was the most famous one. Hundreds. But she killed them. She would take the money, take the baby, take them home, give them laudanum, and
They'd never wake up.
they'd never wake up. And she did that for 30 years before she got caught.
She's definitely the asshole.
That was Amelia Dyer, though. That
Yeah,
wasn't
I know.
Margaret Waters.
But Margaret Waters, we don't know that she didn't do,
We don't.
you know.
But we don't know that she did either.
We don't. But we can look at, handing a baby off to a small child and letting that child be. I mean, what would you do? Can you imagine somebody handed one of these kids to one of your children and said, "Here, hold on to this baby for a minute."
Yeah.
Yeah. It'd be terrible.
It would be.
And intentional. I mean, it's not none of this is an accident.
Except the deaths. Some.
Maybe.
We don't know.
Maybe.
We don't know. Babies
Not
died
not giving her a pass.
all the time
Not
in
giving her a
Victorian
pass.
England.
Yes, they did.
Amelia
Yes, they did.
Dyer's. Those weren't accidents. She poisoned the babies
Yeah.
after she collected the money.
So, enjoy rotting in hell.
Yes.
Don't tell me
and,
she's
and
not.
she is.
Of course.
She was hung. I mean,
After.
after.
Does it sound like she had any remorse for such things? Poisoning, murdering babies?
Amelia Dyer?
Yeah.
Oh, no, she had no remorse.
No. So,
No, it was a problem that she feels like she solved. Unwanted children was a problem, and she fixed it.
you know what you need to fix? Is you need to fix the mom and the dad. The baby didn't do anything.
No.
How horrible. How repulsive, how disgusting that someone could hurt children like that. Especially after convincing the mother that she was going to take care of them. I mean, these mothers probably walked away feeling like, oh, I did such a good thing here, and then your baby's dead within the afternoon.
Yeah. Like Amelia Dyer, her ads in the paper, she always used a different name.
Okay. Very deliberate.
And stated in her ad that she was a married woman and able to have children, looking to adopt.
And someone saw that and thought it was the answer to their prayers. How horrible. How horrible. How disgusting. Doesn't make this one any better. I mean, if she took care of them, and I mean, what did she do when they got to be a certain age? What did she do when they got to be school age?
The intent was never to keep them that long.
Well, what happened if she did keep them that long?
Care.
Yeah.
This was like
Did these mothers all come back and get their babies?
No, but she took them in and found them adoptive parents. A lot of her babies, a lot of Margaret Waters' babies were adopted.
Well, I could be on board with that.
That was...
How did she manage to find families when other people couldn't? Did she sell them?
Yeah.
She sold them to families.
Yeah. I mean, that was foster care in Victorian England. That was what orphanages did also. They took... I'm going to charge you a minimal fee to take your child, and I will go look for a permanent home. And then when we find somebody that can't have children and wants children, or somebody whose baby just died from whooping cough and wants to replace it, essentially, they will pay me to take this baby.
Okay.
That was baby farming. That was
her racket.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was not her intent at first.
No.
Her intent was just to get these babies, get the money, abandon them at a wet nurse, pocket the difference. And then she got more babies, then she could find wet nurses for.
Gotcha. Despicable all the way around. If she happened to find families for them, then, that's one thing. But it doesn't make up for the rest of it.
Right. I mean, there was no foster care. There was no anything.
Things like this are what created.
Right. There was
system.
Orphanages. but they were overcrowded.
Of course.
They were poorly sanitized. There were kids dying of diseases and neglect and starvation and all of this in orphanages. And if they reached a certain age, the orphanage pimped them out basically for work, for servitude.
Back then they didn't see having a childhood as a thing that you
Right.
had the luxury of having.
Right. People had big families at the time because they had farms and they they needed free labor.
I am from the farm country, here in the U.S.
Mhm.
So I mean, I get that that's why that we have a summer vacation,
Right.
for school, is because that was planting.
Yep.
That it was and children very young worked on their family's farm. I don't necessarily see that as a bad thing. I mean, when you do your laundry at your house and you have your kid help you fold it, what's wrong with that? I don't know. If I had a farm, I would want my kids to know how to. I mean, I know how to bale hay. I know how to do all that shit. It's not that I want to, but if that was my reality in my home and my farm, and that's how we fed ourselves, then you bet we go out there and we work the farm.
Right.
We get up early and milk the cows and gather eggs and all this other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
These are honorable tasks.
They are.
So, but not always. I mean, I get it. I had grandparents that farmed, and their family, of course, farmed, and that's the only thing there was. And then there was, when factories were being built, people would leave the farm and go to work because you could live in the city, you could make a living, things like that. So that's when farms kind of started, family farms kind of started to die down, I suppose, at least in my area.
The Industrial Revolution.
Yes. Steam-powered everything. Yes. But we're getting off the subject of selling children and leaving them with other children to just run away and let them suffer and struggle, and who knows what happened to this baby.
So she was executed
Good.
in 1865.
Okay.
The first woman executed for basically baby farming. It was an abundant,
I'm sure,
lucrative business.
I'm certain. Like drug dealing today. Think of all the money you can make drug dealing if you don't get busted.
Right. There wasn't laws,
Of course.
or protections until 1872.
It's I feel like when there's something like this that happens, then you see the need for a law, because you didn't.
This happened in
people were going to do this
1865.
kind of shit.
Why did it take them?
Right. Because somebody had to care about it.
Yeah. So the Infant Life Protection Act was passed in 1872.
Okay.
It required registration
Or
and inspections for anyone taking in more than one infant under the age of a year for payments.
okay, but you had to either catch them at it, or they had to willingly register,
They had to, right,
which I'm sure a lot of people didn't.
right.
But no, that's a start, I suppose.
It was a start. There was another.
You always figure people are going to do the right thing when you say, okay, now this is what we're going to do. It's for the safety of these children. And then people are like, oh, yeah? And they don't do it. You can only
Amelia Dyer wasn't
do
advertising holding on to a baby for a minute.
Right.
She was advertising, I want to adopt a child to raise as my own and love it and give it a good home.
And the poor women that read that and thought, oh,
right. She's the answer
this
to my
lady
prayers.
will take care of my baby that I can't take care of. This lady will give my baby, and maybe it was just that, she'll give my baby a better life than I could give.
Exactly. That's what it was.
Well, if you had a baby that you would keep, but she would give a better life. People do give their children up for such things for the child, and then she murdered them. Can you imagine the horror of hearing this, however many years later that this woman took in babies and then murdered them all?
Right, and her name was Amelia Dyer. That was never the name she used in advertisement. So there were a lot of mothers who Probably never knew.
I mean, one could assume if you hear that and go,
if you hear that and it's this area
and it's this story of she placed ads and such. I mean,
I answered an ad like that. You know,
maybe this was her. Hopefully, it wasn't her, but probably.
But then there's probably that relief for those 12-year-old moms who think they put their child. That's not the name of the woman I gave my baby to, so my baby is fine.
Right. And people can talk themselves into just about anything.
There was another Infant Life Protection Act in 1897, another 25 years after the first one, that extended the 1872 to children under 5.
You don't amend a law just within a couple of years of the law, but I mean, at least.
But you don't take 25 years.
Hopefully
either.
Not. But in the age of technology that we have now, we have a lot faster response time. I'm not saying that's great, but you know, it's not something that.
And this one, the one in 1897, also extended it not just for baby farms. But also wet nurses or anybody that was going to care for a child for more than 48 hours had to register.
Oh.
So, I mean, the responsibility is on you as the person going to care for the child.
Right.
But there's also the parents.
Yes. Everybody's responsible. Everybody
that's leaving that can go to the station and say, hey,
this person's got my kid.
I'm leaving my kid here for a week.
No, I get it.
I was think
people should rise up and do better.
Right.
And so many people don't.
There were a lot of widowers whose wives died and they have 11 kids.
Yeah.
And I can keep the older kids. They can help me on the farm, but there's nobody to raise the babies. So they would put them in baby farms.
Can you imagine?
Keep my kids safe, and I'm going to come back and get it when it's more independent and... I mean, what other, or I get married.
Babysitter.
Yeah.
Babysitter. Glorified babysitter.
That's essentially what it was.
Yep.
It's like a foster care or a daycare or a live-in daycare.
Live-in daycare. Wow. Awful. Awful.
Awful.
And not excusable.
Not excusable, but also what other option was there? I mean, not to kill the baby, but...
Right.
This could have been, if you did it right, a good business.
It could have, if you had done it right. If the people who did do it right could do it right, so could you. You know, but you didn't want to.
I think I found 7 or 8 different women that were hung for baby farming.
Interesting.
In Victoria, England.
A couple cold-hearted. Right. How absolutely unconscionable.
And almost all of them, it was the same thing. They would place the ad, get the baby, take the baby to their house, drug it, and dump it. And run the ad again. And Amelia Dyer did this for 30 years.
Before she got busted. Hell is full. My God. That kind of thing, that, you know, it's unforgivable. It's just unforgivable. I mean, the Lord forgives. I'm not so good.
I'm not the Lord.
I'm not. I discussed this with the Lord when I'm not good like you. I know you know that I'm not good like you. I try hard and I do the best that I can, but sometimes I just can't take the leap. Because every bit of this is unforgivable. So I'm glad they were hung.
There were several in the U.S. also. Australia.
So it was just an epidemic.
It was all over the world.
Oops. Sorry about that. I kicked this.
Spain. I found some in France. They were everywhere.
God bless any poor child that got into this situation.
And any poor mother.
Yeah, any poor mother.
I mean, there were no laws against rape.
Well, no. I mean, it's also something that had to come about.
Right.
You know, and like marital rape. That was
legal until the 70s in the U.S.
Yes. Because they didn't consider it so. Well, you married him.
Right.
Well,
that is your obligation
I
as a
still
wife.
get to say no. But, I mean, that's a thing that was found to be repulsive and found to be wrong, and so we'll change it.
Yeah.
And that's all you can do is find things that are horrible and reprehensible and change them.
We're talking about a whole lot of teenage girls giving birth to babies that were the product of rape, knowing that if somebody found out they couldn't provide for their baby, they couldn't provide for themselves, they would be ostracized and kicked out of society, and there was no option. There was no option.
I get it, and that's where I look at something like this and go, there should have been. Somebody should have cared enough to look past the moral code and say, you know what, we're just going to help.
Even churches wouldn't help.
No, of course not.
An unwed mother.
Yes, because they looked at it as, you know,
that is like the ultimate sin. You fornicated.
I know. I get it.
So, I mean, there were women who, I mean, you can't just take in a baby without
questions,
money to support the baby.
Money too, of course. Yep.
So there were women who were like, I want to help you. I want to help you get this figured out. I will take your child. I will raise your child. You pay me £10.
Yeah.
Because I can't afford to support another child.
That's reasonable.
Right.
I'm sorry,
and then there were women like Margaret Waters.
You're going to murder them.
And Amelia Dyer.
How do you look in that little face and decide, I'm going to kill you? Zero forgiveness. I'm just not that person. Not that they're asking me to, but just as my own commentary on our own podcast, I can say, how would you forgive something like that?
Right.
That's why they were hung, and I'm glad. I'm glad. Were they buried in unmarked graves or anything like that? Burn them, chop them up into little pieces, just something to add insult to injury.
I didn't look at where they were buried.
Vile. It's vile. Every bit of this is vile. It is. That's why we help our fellow man. I mean, if there would have been help back then, none of this would have happened.
Exactly.
But there wasn't.
Exactly.
And then there were people who learned about this and decided, you know, I'm going to do something. And they step in. And that's when things change. That's the only time things change. Okay, right. She's the asshole. They all are the assholes.
She's the asshole.
Babies that we will never forget now. They were people and they mattered. They mattered.
All right.
Okay. Definitely the asshole.
Definitely the asshole. Let us know what you think.
We know what you think because we think it too.
Yeah, I was just thinking that. I mean, don't tell us
if you're on
keep it to yourself.
If you're on their side, we're not the group for you.
And then come back on Saturdays for Am I the Asshole? And Tuesdays for Superstitions.
Right on. Be here. We'll lighten the mood for next time. We have to hit the serious stuff too. Some of it's fun.
Some of it's fun.
This one wasn't very fun.
It wasn't. No.
But it's educational and I've learned a lot.
Victorian England. Victorian age everywhere.
Yes. Bad deal.
Was something.
Yeah. And I mean, everybody looks at it and go, oh, look how beautiful the architecture and the clothes were. But
they had that, yeah.
Yeah, they did. But they had this side of it.
They had a weird obsession with death.
Yeah. I mean, you know, so do we. I mean, look at all our movies and literature and all that. I know you don't watch movies, but you read.
I also don't make jewelry out of dead people's hair.
No, we appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah.
They did.
They did, of course.
In Victorian England, Victorian era.
Yep.
All right. Join us. Let us know what you think. She loves you.
I do.
I have a fondness.
She does.